Fantastic. Wonderful. So while it is doing its little thing there and preparing to go live, then you guys will always have access to it. And there it is live up on YouTube. Yay, that's fantastic. So welcome to the call today. It is super exciting to see all of you. And I'm excited that this is going live onto YouTube so that you can share this with all of with your colleagues, with your teams. Okay, great. Yay. Oh, shame you're under the weather. I'm glad that you are still watching with us in any event. So last week we set some goals. We took a little bit of a different take on goals. And I know because it's just the way it is, it works for me. I am guilty of this. I'm pretty sure that there are some of us who got really excited after last week's call and then just didn't move because this is human nature. And what I'm going to share with you today is exactly what's causing that. And I'm going to share with you a tool and a technique that's not my work. It's work that comes from two psychologists named Ustin and Gottel. Goldweiser is their names. So I'm going to share that with you today. And by the end of today's call, you're going to leave with an actual physical tool to move you from imagining and fantasizing and feeling really good about that goal to actually implementing the goal. And we did start a little bit of that work last week. So for those of you who I have not yet had the privilege of meeting, I know that the team is growing a lot. My name is Tanya Adams. I'm a neuroscience-based coach for women. Primarily, I work with female entrepreneurs, though I do have a really wide client base. And what I specialize in is helping people rewire their brains for success in life and in business, whatever that looks like for you. And I've been partnered now with Nu Skin since 2019. My husband and I joined the business at a time where we were looking for another business opportunity. He'd closed his business. And we were looking for something that would give us flexibility and freedom. We were living in a little village. We wanted something we could build online and take global because my business was already online through the coaching. And so we've partnered with Nu Skin now for 6.5 years, which is a long time. And we feel very, very grateful for all the opportunities that have come our way. We've built a large team. We have traveled the world with Nu Skin. We've spoken on stage around the world to hundreds or thousands of people. And really, the most amazing part about this business is that it provides a platform for anybody who wants to become an entrepreneur or maybe wants to learn entrepreneurial skills to do that in a safe and contained way with very little risk. And yet you learn all of the skills, mindset training, business development training that you would need that are actually transferable skills into your own business. So that's part of what we really love. And I'm super grateful for this platform every week and for all the opportunities that Nu Skin has given us. So let's have a look at what happens when we start goals. Last time I spoke about the fact that the brain decides before you're even aware of it what is going to happen. So your brain is taking your body on a journey. And what's happening inside the brain is that the brain activates what's known as a state of readiness to act, and it cues up all the necessary biological markers to get you into that action state. And a very simple way of understanding this is to think about this as an example. And if you will do this with me, you'll notice this. I want you to think to yourself, I'm going to stand up now. Though don't, just stay sitting. So let's try that. Think, okay, I'm going to stand up. And nothing happened because your brain knew that you had no intention of standing up. And so it didn't change anything in your body. About what needs to happen for you to physically get yourself out of the chair is that there needs to be a chemical change. There needs to be some change in your heart rate. There's a little bit of change in the blood flow that goes to different muscles to activate you rising up from the chair. You're going against gravity. You've got to use your muscles to do that. Now, the brain, as you know, because I talk about this a lot, is always checking on energy, and it's always managing energy expenditure for itself and for the body. Now, I'm going to ask you to stand up without thinking about it. Stand up in your chair, wherever you are now, just stand up. Okay, so now you can sit down again. You've had an experience. What you would have noticed, well, and I'd love to put in the chats, what did you notice was happening in your body as you just stood up? Did you notice any change in your physiology? Did you notice your muscles having to activate to get you out of the chair? Did you notice maybe a little bit of a change in your heart rate? Okay, used your muscles, right. Now, the use of muscles comes from a signal from the brain to say, now we need to activate some muscle tissue. So this is all governed by the brain. Now, I needed a stretch. Okay, great. So you would have noticed a physiological state. So here's what our psychologist friends discovered about goal setting and about whether or not we follow through. How many of you have been taught that part of your goal setting and manifestation process is visualization? Give me a zoom hand or nod. Okay, so visualization. And there's a really good reason for this. The brain activates the same neural circuitry when you're visualizing as it does if you're remembering things. The brain doesn't have a different circuitry system for visualizing something that hasn't happened versus memory. What this means then is that there is an inherent flaw in the visualization process in as much as the brain can sometimes put itself in a state of, oh, well, we've got the goal, so now we don't have to really act. And this is one of the risks of positive thinking. So sometimes you'll hear me say positive thinking doesn't work. Positive thinking is, in and of itself, is not sufficient. It is the starting point. The trouble with sitting in a meditative state after your goals and doing a visualization is that that can then activate the chemicals that say we have ticked the action. And the brain then is going to make an assessment, well, that's fine, then we just carry on. We don't need to expend any more energy because we've got all the feels from the goal, right? Now, how many of you have experienced this? You've come out of a meditation and you feel great for a day and you're on fire and you're like, ah, this is me. I'm gonna achieve all these goals. And by 2 days later, you're confused, frustrated, and angry with yourself because 2 days has gone past. That's a whole 48 hours. There's no more volume on the board. You haven't phoned anybody more than you ever did. And now you're confused and angry with yourself. So the technique that Erston came up with was a technique that he called WOOP. And WOOP is a very helpful technique that introduces something called mental contrast. Because of the fact that the brain is always assessing energy usage, when we use this technique, what you engage here is that the brain makes a decision about whether or not that goal is accurate and whether or not it's going to follow through. Now, in my example of just stand up, if you had a cat on your lap and I said stand up, how many of you would have stood up? Most people will not disturb a sleeping cat on their lap, right? Even though the instruction was just stand up, because the brain has assessed this is a lot more work than is required for a simple little thing that this lady's asking me to do. The whole idea of disturb the cat and it becomes like a little bit of a bridge too far. So I'll rather just sit and listen to her. So the payoff for disturbing the cat when we stand up isn't as big as just sitting and carrying on listening. Whereas if you have nothing on your lap, then it's easy to stand up. And the brain is literally doing this all the time. It's being presented with, okay, well, this is the thing we think we might want to do. How hard is it going to be? What are the potential obstacles? And then it makes a decision about whether it puts you in that readiness state to act. And this is all happening without your awareness. So what I'd love us to do today is to do the work together. The WOOP anagram stands for W is for wish, and wish is the outcome that you want to create. So when you're setting a goal, you might say, well, by the 14th, because that's your next commission cutoff run, I will have reached a certain point in my business. So you'd set an outcome, a wish, and then O is actually the emotional outcome. What makes that important? And even when I'm coaching one-on-one, when a client comes into a session, I will say to them, what do you want to achieve in this session? And the next question I ask them is, what makes that important for us to work on today? I'm always checking how important and what the emotional payoff is for that person. So it sounds like this. By the 14th, I'm going to get X amount of sales done. And when I get that done, it's important to me because I'll feel like I'm on track. I'll feel like I'm, less anxious about the month end. I'll feel confident and competent that I can do this, whatever else it is that you will feel. And then the second O is going to be obstacle. So it's win, outcome, obstacle. Now, this is where we do the mental contrast. This is where we're helping our brain's natural energy assessment mechanism go, okay, what is the obstacle that I'm going to face? And if I'm coaching on this, I will say, what do you think might get in the way, or what might stop you from achieving what we want to achieve today? And so you can frame the question in different ways, but what might stop you from getting to that outcome that you want, that goal that you want, and feeling confident? And that might be, well, I've got a birthday party this week. I have, I've got in-laws coming. Uh, and then what I'd encourage you to do is go inside and go, well, okay, those are external circumstances, which are in most cases are controllable on the basis of setting agreements with people. We can always set agreements with people to excuse ourselves from various things. What's more challenging to work with is an internal obstacle. Now, this might sound like, I hate phoning. I don't have a script. I don't feel confident with voice notes. So write down the primary obstacle, and how you'll discover this is look back over since we met last week and go, well, if I haven't done the work, what was it that got in the way? And inherently, this is not a mystery to you. This is about being very, very radically truthful to you. And what then happens when you put that together, the brain straight away starts its assessment, and it goes, well, is the payoff big enough for me to override and do the work that I'm going to have to do to get to that obstacle, to get to that outcome, at least to get to that win? And so there's a couple of really powerful things that happen when we position this. One is that the brain is going to then release a goal that it perceives it requires more energy than it's willing to deliver. And sometimes we sit in the place of having lots of goals and feeling quite attached to a goal. Sometimes it's because we've set that goal often over a number of months, and we feel obligated to stick with that goal, though we haven't done an accurate check. So we've got this open tab all the time in our brain of this goal that we've been saying. And I know it's happened to me where I've set this goal over and over. I'm going to be at this place in the compensation plan, or I'm going to have, I'm going to qualify for that. And then every month I set it because I've set it up in my own head that there's this expectation that I carry that goal forward, though I haven't accurately done a check to see whether my brain is willing to work with me on that, and whether, if it's not, I can reframe it in such a way that I can engage my brain to do the work. So when we use this technique, the brain, you are then able to make more effective decisions about which goals to keep and which goals to let go of, because you've actually got an accurate measurement inside yourself of whether or not the brain's going to work with you to get this job done. And when these two researchers put their research together, so Wisden came up with the whole concept of fantasizing sometimes gives you the payoff without you doing the work, which is bad, and then you don't move into that energy activation state. And then Gottweiser came up with the concept of if then I. And when you put these together, what happens is you end up with a whole process. So WOOP sounds like this. It sounds like, what do I want? Why do I want it? What would stop me from getting there? And then we put in a series of 3 stacked statements that say, after the connect call, I'm going to spend an hour sending voice notes to people. Or when I have finished my exercise for the morning, I'm going to write my contact list. So there's if something happens, if there is a forcing, if there's a function that happens, we talk about this in cues, in habits, then I will do this thing that I know is going to get me to the goal. So this is what we're going to work on today. And it's going to be a real practical session. I'm going to give you some more examples. You might say, I know some of you are really good at this. When I've delivered the product to my client, I will give them a free sample, or I will offer them a follow-up, an appointment. Something else we use is when I end a call, I will ask for the next call. What's next and when, right? So these are all if-then statements that the brain is able to keep itself in momentum, and it doesn't create breaks between isolated events, and it all forms part of the one event. So what I'd love you to do is to write down now, and if you want to share this, your WOOP statement in the chats, you can afterwards. So I'd love you to write down what is the next goal that you're going to work on. Today's Friday. Maybe you've got product demonstrations over the weekend. Maybe you're working towards a milestone on the 14th. Whatever your next goal is. And let's see if we can do something on this call as well. So once I've written down my goal, then we're going to send out a DM to somebody about that goal. So that's what we're going to do today. So write down your goal for whenever it is. And then next to the goal, like right next to it or underneath it, what would stop you from getting that done? What's the internal block that has up until now kept you from getting that done? Is it a lack of confidence? Is it, I don't know what to say to the person? I'm afraid of rejection. Okay, so you've all got your goal that you're working towards, your objection or your obstacle, and what is the reason you would want this? What makes this important? I should have asked that first. What makes this important? The first O is why is it important that you work towards this goal? What will you feel when you've achieved it? Okay, so you've got your wish, you've got your how it will feel, your ultimate outcome, because we're actually, the brain doesn't really have a high value for getting to a certain sales number. It has a value for what it would feel like when you got there. So you've got your goal, you've got your outcome, you've got your obstacle. And now we're going to write down the statements that you will use to push yourself into that readiness state. So before we write those statements, I want you to just do a check on that goal and check inside yourself. You would notice either you're going to get, oh, okay, I can see why we would do this, and the obstacle is overcomable if we have a framework, or you might get the obstacle is way too big to justify the payoff. So just check for yourself if you've got which one of those you've got. And if there's anybody who has got a really big resistance come up that says, that obstacle is way too big to justify what I'm going to get at the end of it, then let's then pop that in the chats and see if we can, either you're going to rework your goal a bit. Now, what can happen here is we overstate a goal. Last week, I talked about setting goals no more than 20% out of what's kind of within your normal range. And this is the underlying principle for it, because the brain is going to then be willing to accommodate the work that has to be done there. More than that, the brain starts to say, the payoff's not big enough for me expending the energy to get this thing done. Right, so you've all got your first three. So now we're going to write down 3 if-then statements. And these are your commitment statements that you will use to simply do the thing. And it's not about judging. What you're doing here is you're helping your brain to put the action into the automated part of the brain, so where the basal ganglia are. And the more that you put these if-then statements in, even when that thing comes up that says, I feel nervous to pick up the phone, because you've put the triggers in the basal ganglia, in the automation part of your brain is automatically going to do that thing despite how you feel about it. And this is a very important principle. You always have the power to act despite your thinking and feeling. There's ways to make that easier. You can white knuckle that, though this is a way to make it easier. So let's start with your first if-then statement. And it's if. I would steer clear of time-bound cues because many neurodivergent people, especially ADHD people, find time blindness to be a problem. So I recommend not to use things like at 9 o'clock I will. It's normally more effective to say once the connect call is done, or once I've dropped the kids off from school, or when I've finished writing when I open my WhatsApp, I will first send 3 customer DMs before I engage with any other chat. So here you're habit stacking because how many of us are just automatically going onto WhatsApp in a mindless way? So use that. You're going to open WhatsApp. I guarantee it. If you haven't already opened it while I'm talking to you, you're going to open it as soon as this call ends. And if your if-then statement is the minute I open WhatsApp, I will send 3 customer DMs before I respond to any other message. Then you are there. You're in there and you've put up kind of guardrails. So write down 3 of those. I'm also going to attach a link to a worksheet for you as well that you can use a template for this so that you can work with it. All right, who's got at least one if-then statement already written? Okay, Terry Ann's good. All right, so your goal is to get 3. Okay, so Nats, what I'd love to see there is after this thing happens, then I will do this thing. So the phrasing is quite important. And what goes wrong with this model is when it's vague. The brain really doesn't operate well if the instruction set is vague. So, and it sounds kind of corny. It sounds like you're talking to a 2-year-old, though the brain, if you've ever tried to prompt ChatGPT and been vague and then annoyed with what ChatGPT has given you, it's the same thing. The art of running your brain is in the prompt. So you've got to become a master brain prompter. After the connect call, I will phone at least 1 customer to set up a personal demo. Once I have phoned my customer to set up a personal demo, I will send 3 follow-up messages to the people I contacted yesterday. Once I've sent my 3 follow-up messages, I will make 3 phone calls for new business prospecting. So can you see how there's a trigger for each one? So the brain isn't left going, oh, I know what we're doing next now. It knows because you've got a very clear path. And to the degree that you repeat that at the same time of the day, consistently, there will come a point where that becomes a behavior that it simply just comes out of you. It's not a behavior that you have to necessarily force. What will happen is the contact list, the call, whatever your trigger point will happen. And in fact, what happens practically after that is once you've built this into the basal ganglia, if you try and deviate, and in fact, here's a good example. How many of you, when we reduced the connect calls to 3 times a week, felt weird on the days that there was no connect call? Like, what is going on? Okay, now that is exactly the principle, because all of us for 5 or 6 years have at 8:30 dialed into a Zoom call. I mean, I don't even think about that. I literally, in my day, there's this stuff and then there's a Zoom call link, and nobody thinks about it. And then suddenly now on a Wednesday, we don't click the link. And I'm sure that it was quite interesting. I'm interested to understand what happened, that this call was moved from Thursday to Friday. some of you would have felt super weird yesterday that you're not listening to me on Thursday, and then super weird that you're listening to me on Friday, right? Now, that all is a very real example of what I'm talking about here. When you get the stuff into the basal ganglia, today is now Thursday officially, yes, which means tomorrow would be Friday. And for the rest of the day, what you might find is that you keep thinking it's Thursday because in your brain, it's just made the association with me with Thursdays with mindset. And every so often throughout the day, you'll be thinking, oh, I've still got one more day in the week. And then you'll remember that it's actually Friday. Now, this is the power of the work. We've all had these experiences. When you've got a 4-day week or whatever, then suddenly you end up not knowing what day of the week it is. You can consciously program this. And the more that you consciously program these after, so for people in my team specifically, they would say after the, which has now changed again, after the Facebook Live, then I go onto the Connect call. And so you've got these processes. So what I'd love you to do now is to look on that list and choose one of the actions that is triggerable and easy to do right now. So once Tanya gives the instruction, I am going to do something. So think about it because I'm going to give you an instruction. And so after Tanya says go, I will and pick something. Send a DM to somebody, send a voice note, it doesn't matter. We've got 3 minutes. At 58, which is now, I'm going to ask you to go. So do the thing that you said. After Tanya said go, I will. And go ahead and do it. Well, so I've said go. So go do it. That was it. That was me go. Great. So what you will notice is that the things in these stacked phrases must be small micro actions. So you're not going to say, after the Connect call, I'm going to phone 35 people. And I've spoken about this often. The brain likes to get a win quite quickly, and it's the repetition of the wins that keeps the brain in momentum. So these three stacked things must be micro. If you can get them down to under 2 minutes, then you're in the sweet spot there because the brain's assessment of, okay, how hard is it for me to overcome my nerves to send one voice note? Well, that's not too hard. How hard is it for me to overcome my nerves to pick up the phone 10 times? That suddenly the brain goes, no, that's a big deal. That from an energy perspective, that's too much. So keep it short. And then what I'd love you to do is these if-then statements, stick them on a post-it note on your computer, because the more visual it is, the more likely you're going to stick to it, particularly if you've got internal resistance about doing the thing. Your brain's very quickly going to ask you to forget about that. So put it somewhere. It's kind of like, I'll pretend you didn't say that and we'll just put it out of sight, out of mind. So don't let it put it out of sight, out of mind. Put it on your computer, put it on your screensaver somewhere and use those every single day, just those 3 short actions. And then in the worksheet that you can download, once I've loaded it into the link, you then can do a little feedback for yourself at the end of the week where you get to look at what you can improve, what you learned. And what I would expect is that the more that you do this, the more willingness your brain will give you to move into that action ready stage. And you would naturally start to find that you start to do the things that are required to get to your goal. And the goal doesn't just become this beautiful emotional fantasy of living on your island. Good. Yay. Okay. Message sent. Good job. So I see that there's lots of chats here. We are at 9:01. I want to quickly just check the chats for you and see. Okay, great. Sort out the phone and rejoin life. Okay, so Cassie, sort out the phone. I would say make that sort out the phone is big. The brain doesn't know what sort out the phone means. So break that down into really short things. Like first I will I don't know, get rid of all the photos on my phone or whatever that is. Great. Alrighty, guys. Well, thanks for hanging out with me. Today is Friday, not Thursday, and have a happy weekend. Bye.